So Mephibosheth lived in that fear because he didn't know David. And he didn't know what his father had done. He didn't know that there was a promise for him. All he knew is, I was related to the last king. That's not good for me. Plus, you have to believe that everyone was telling him that his whole life.
Yes.
Keep your head down. Stay out of sight. Don't make waves. Don't let anyone know who you are. Mephibosheth had lived in the fear of being found out. I believe he had lived in the fear of never having to meet David, of never getting an invitation to the palace, of never even appearing on the king's radar. He was living in fear of his life. And here's where I want us to consider the sovereignty of God and things we don't understand. And bear with me, don't turn me off. What if the thing that kept Mephibosheth alive all these years was his disability? What if his brokenness had saved his life rather than ruining it? What if the very thing that made him appear weak was God's gift to keep him hidden? What if his condition was God's kindness to him? Right? Don't we? Like, if Mephibosheth is this strong young man, if he's growing in strength, that means he's also growing in threat, right? He's also growing in what other people think. All of a sudden now there's this idea. Even if David never has the idea, you've got the whole country watching it to see what they might do. And so what if Mephibosheth was disabled to save his life? What if his nurse was supposed to fall so that she could keep him alive? What if that's actually the greatest thing she ever did for him? I mean, we see this in other places in Scripture, don't we? Wasn't the barrenness of Sarah, Rebecca, Hannah, and Elizabeth just as much a part of God's plan for their lives as when they became pregnant and bore the children that had been promised and purposed by God? We've been reading in the Torah. Wasn't the 430 years of captivity in Egypt just as much a part of God's promise to Abraham as Israel inheriting the land eventually? Weren't the promises that the apostles would be arrested, beaten, and even killed for the gospel just as much a part of God's plan as the fact that they would be endued with power to be his witnesses? Wasn't Paul's thorn in the flesh just as much for his good as his call to stand before kings and governors? Doesn't John 11 tell us very clearly that Jesus waited for Lazarus to die before he went to Bethany because he loved him and his sisters Mary and Martha? What if the things we hate are as much a part of God's plan as the things we love? What if his kindness toward us is revealed in places of weeping just as much as the places of rejoicing? What if God being for us means that even those things that come against us are part of how God has chosen to show his kindness to and show his kindness through us? What if his ways really are higher than ours? Right? Like, I mean, we know the Scripture, we quote the Scripture, but we generally only quote it when we don't understand what's going on. But what if it's just a reality? His ways really are higher, his plans really are better, and his kindness really is far more than we could ever imagine it to be. What if Mephibosheth was only alive to meet David because he had been dropped and disabled as a 5-year-old child?